Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of our Facts First podcast. Again, this is part of our special Bangsamoro series in partnership with the Institute for Autonomy and Governance. Now, for this particular episode, we're going to talk about the scheduled elections, the very first regional elections in the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao in 2022. We are joined today by a former COMELEC Commissioner Luie Tito Guia, who will be talking about a lot of the issues, the nitty-gritty about the upcoming elections in the Bangsamoro. Thank you very much, Commissioner Guia, for joining us on this podcast, sir.
Thank you for inviting me, Christian. It's
Okay,
my honor to be
okay.
here.
First, it's quite weird because we're going to talk about the scheduled elections in 2022, but we know that there's still a lot of uncertainty because there are moves to actually postpone the elections in 2022 and extend the Bangsamoro Transition Authority until 2025. First, I'd like to get your opinion. Would it be better for the region if the first ever BARM elections would be postponed in 2022?
Now, that's a difficult question to answer, but by default, of course, we would want all elections to be held on a regular interval, periodic, and the interval should be predictable. You know, when the law was passed, that's Republic Act 11054, which is the new organic act of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, the law is specific in saying that the election should be held uh, uh, on the second Monday of May 2022 as to be synchronized with the national and local election. And you know, when theoretically, when the people approve the Organic Act, that is what they are looking for. And if you really want to be strict about it, I mean, it means that the BTA, which is in effect the temporary or parliament, was mandated by the people to come up with the necessary preparations for an election to be held in 2022.
Mm.
So by default, that is what is supposed to happen.
But
Um,
mm,
but you know, COVID was not expected. They did not happen. But let me just point out that worldwide, more than 100 countries and territories have gone on with their election despite experiencing the COVID pandemic. So COVID alone cannot be used as an excuse to postpone the election. But you know, I am not sure. There might be some realities on the ground. If you must remember, Christian, the election or the coming up with a new organic code or organic act came through in the context of a peace process.
yeah.
So people are saying that you know there has to be some obligations that need to be satisfied uh, first before election can be held. So it's quite tricky, you know. But you know, postponement of the election is not something that is actually unanimously agreed on.
Mm.
Although there are more people who says that you know you cannot have election if some of the things that are necessary to make it happen and to satisfy the objective of the peace process.
That,
Then
that that's actually the
there is
argument. That's actually the
yes.
argument coming from the more Islamic Liberation Front, in particular, the interim chief minister Murad Ibrahim. He of course he cited the COVID-19 pandemic, but he also cited other reasons. That's why they're pushing for a postponement. Number one, of course, the commitments coming from the national government, the delay in the
Mhm.
release of funds, especially last year. There are many different complications, and he himself was quite he admitted that if elections would be held today or in 2022, there's a good chance that they might lose because there are a lot of deliverables that they have not delivered yet. But in terms of preparation, I'm going to ask you as a former COMELEC commissioner. I mean, if they proceed with the elections in 2022 and we're now in 2021, right? Do they still have enough time to prepare for 2022 in the
Well,
region?
as far as you know, COMELEC is preparing as if there's going to be a BARM election. But the tricky thing there is that you know the BARM election should be conducted in the context of a new Bangsamoro electoral code. which ideally should have been passed, well, ideally more than a year ago, because it presents a very new concept of government that is unique to BARM. Now, personally, I'm actually excited about the form of government, the electoral design in the BARM, because I think having a parliament that half of which will be elected through a system of proportional representation is something that might even augur well if we want to reform our national constitution and come up with a new electoral system design.
Mm.
And but the requisite, of course, is to make the people become familiar with the new system, and it was therefore, it would have been necessary for the BTA to have prioritized and come up with the electoral code earlier on. But that is not supposed to be the case. So that is what is making things difficult for COMELEC to be organizing an election simultaneous with the national and local elections. Uh, the concept of election in the BARM, although the BARM law itself says that if the electoral code is not passed, then the current electoral laws can be made to apply so
Mm.
that the election will push through nevertheless in the BARM.
But this is something unique, right? So let's take this opportunity to help educate the people in the Bangsamoro in the new region. You mentioned the new electoral design for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. People might be surprised. Hey, so I'm not going to elect directly the chief minister. Okay. So talk to us about the process itself. What's so unique about this parliamentary elections? You mentioned that half of the parliament will be elected, or half of the members will be elected through a system of proportional representation, meaning it has to be proportional, right? Okay, so
Yes,
that means 50% of the 80 member parliament. Okay, talk to us about
yes.
the design. What's so different
Okay,
about this?
first and foremost, Republic Act 11054, or the organic law of the BARM, mandates a parliamentary system. Basically, a parliamentary system is where people elect their representatives, and then the representative chooses the chief minister or the prime minister in other parliamentary countries. So there is, by design, there is no direct election of the chief executive and the chief of government,
Mm.
okay, or the chief of government, the head of government. So that
So
is
it's
the
different.
design.
It's different from electing a regional governor, for instance, right?
No,
Directly. Okay.
yes. If the armed region was used to electing directly the regional governor, as prescribed in the 1989 an organic law amended in 2001, that is not going to be the case anymore. The people will elect representatives, and the representatives, when they convene, will elect the chief minister, who will be the head of government. So that's how it is, because it's a parliamentary system.
So how do you
um
think the political parties, and I suppose, no, I don't suppose this should be the case. There has to be a strong political party system within the
well,
region.
that is the premise of a parliamentary system, especially if the manner of election or the electoral design is through a proportional representation system. Because under a proportional representation system, you vote for the party, not the individuals. And the party will come up with a party list, from whom the nominees will be taken,
Mm,
and depending on the number of votes obtained by that party in the election, in proportion to the
mm.
total votes for the proportional representation portion of the parliament, that is the number of representatives that the party would have
Okay,
in the,
let's simplify this
okay.
for our
Yes,
viewers and our
yes,
listeners. For instance, 40 out of the 80 members of the parliament will be elected through a system of proportional representation.
yes.
If one party manages to win all those seats, let's say 100% of the votes, so they
Okay,
have to
first,
occupy 100% of the seats.
okay, first 100% of the votes
Yeah.
of the for the PR
Cast,
system.
yeah, cast for the
Okay,
PR
so
system.
the way it's going to happen when the voters vote is that there's going to be at least two votes one for the district representative, because there's still district representative that will be 40% of the parliament, and one for the proportional representation, which is actually in real sense the a party list
Yeah.
thing. Okay, so you're going to vote twice. Now, again, after having voted for your district representative in the parliament or district minister in your parliament, then you will vote for the party that will nominate. So that's
Mm.
it. So the percentage, the proportion will be taken only from the votes in the proportional representation
Yeah.
portion. Okay.
Oo.
Yes, theoretically, if one gets 100% of the proportional representation vote, then it gets 100% of the seats allocated for the proportional representation portion of the parliament, and
Meaning
that will be
40,
40.
40
Yes.
seats. Of course,
So
that.
it's really a giving mandate, or how much mandate a party would have, and that the amount of mandate would be considered will determine the number of seats
Okay,
that
so
the
this is
party.
the real spirit of the system of proportional representation, unlike
Yes,
the Philippine party list system that we have now, wherein the number of seats a group might get will be limited to three. Kasi that's
yes,
another debate altogether, right? But in this case, again, this presupposes that we have strong political party system,
yes.
a strong political party system within the Bangsamoro already. Are they anywhere near that? This is a
No,
this is new.
no, they are not, and that is why that is one very important reason why the Bangsamoro Transition Authority should have passed the electoral code earlier on, because the electoral code is supposed to provide for the qualifications of the parties that will participate in the Bangsamoro election, much more in the proportional representation portion of the parliament. And you know, a lot of things can happen. A proportional representation system is a system that incentivizes uh, electoral success through political parties. So
Mm.
it tends to make politics more programmatic than personality based. So it's like re-engineering your electoral systems design, so that people and political contestant would tend to gravitate towards a party, or towards a party system, or uh, ideally a programmatic kind of politics to ensure electoral success. No,
Mm.
that's the ideal. Rather than what we have now, a first past the post single member district, which is
Yeah.
what we're used to, is basically a very personality based election, and I think that is one of the the Bangsamoro Organic Law itself says that one of its main objective is to promote programmatic politics. So I
Yeah.
think that is consistent with the vision of embodied or stated in the principles, statement of principles in the Organic Act.
Of course, that is the objective, that is the aspiration, that is the dream. But whether that would be achieved, I mean, sorry for sounding quite not that
Cynical.
optimistic. I don't want to say use the word cynical, pero not that optimistic yet, because we're dealing here with clans, even with warlords, with well-entrenched families in
And
in regional
dynasties.
politics and dynasties, di ba? So,
Yes.
for instance, you might end up with one prominent party. Perhaps siguro the party of the MILF, 'di ba? The United Bangsamoro Justice Party. Example lang, I'm not saying na sila talaga yung very very dominant, although they are dominant now, 'di ba? So you might end up with two parties. The other one is just perfunctorily somehow discharging the job of a party. Kasi given the context in the Bangsamoro, you might end up with a certain political party actually dominating the elections and perhaps controlling the parliament, but disregarding the spirit that was enshrined in the organic law.
Okay. Providing a political party mechanism in the Bangsamoro Electoral Code can include or might include something like prohibiting members of the same family being nominated in the list.
Mm-mm.
Okay, or perhaps it can provide that, if you are nominated in one party, a relative can no longer be nominated in another party. So these are the ideal setup that you can put into the Bangsamoro Electoral Code, which under the law, COMELEC is supposed to recognize and acknowledge when it implements the election. So, well, elections in the BARM is really problematic historically, but you
Messy.
cannot change it overnight.
Yeah.
But the first step that can be done actually is to re-engineer the process. Well, things will be the same anyway if you don't do anything. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it's really starting to do something and hope that it works. But of course, one of the basic ingredient beyond, changing the design of the system is, of course, to strengthen party system.
Mm-mm.
So how do you strengthen party system? And this is even true insofar as national politics is concerned.
Yeah.
Institutionalized political parties make incentivize, a stronger political party than, let's say a personality or an individual dominating a political party. So this can be done by, re-engineering your design, and hopefully it will work. No, it is not going to be perfect. Some other countries that adopted that kind of system had their own problem, but to me, it's quite better to start with it right now. Now, if we do not do anything, as designed, then it's going to be the same thing. You can postpone the elections all you want. It's not going to change.
And
So
actually, if this
designing
succeeds,
it,
mm,
yeah,
if this succeeds, this can serve as a model for the rest of the country in
to me,
case,
that
let's
is what,
say, the national government intends in later on to actually shift to a parliamentary system, right? This can serve as a model.
well, to me, I would, disclose that I'm an advocate of adoption of a proportional representation system. To me, is a system that is more representative, and it allows for lesser wasted votes.
Mm.
Because in a first past the post single members district system, when one wins, all the votes that were given to the loser are actually disregarded. In a proportional
I,
representation
I
system,
agree.
even a 2% vote might give you a probable chance of obtaining a seat
Mm.
in the parliament. So I mean, obviously that's more inclusive a system than any other system that can be had. So my interest is to make my personal, I mean, if I can help, of course, is to make sure that the Bangsamoro experiment works. At least, no, it's not going to be perfect. There are bigger problems than election in the Bangsamoro region, peace and all these things. But you got to start somewhere, and having good politics and having good leaders and making sure that the leaders have the true mandate of the people is one good start in reforming the society.
By the way, are we talking here of a closed list system of proportional representation?
Okay, that's another thing that needs to be defined by the electoral code. Probably, are we saying that we are adopting a closed list system where the voters cannot have a say on who gets to the list ahead of the others? No,
Mm.
unlike in other system in Indonesia, they have an open list system where the voters can have a say on who gets on top of the list and
Mm.
gets nominated. But there are thinking, or there are opinions that having an open list might um, uh, destroy or the purpose of making elections more programmatic, because
It might
you
defeat the
would
purpose.
again, yeah, you would go again look at personalities to elect a particular party regardless of the ideological base
Which
of
is
that
what's
party.
happening now in the party list system nationwide.
Well, there are a lot of problems with our party list
Yeah,
system.
they're supposed to vote for the party, but since they are familiar with those campaigning as nominees or campaigning for the party, di ba? Sometimes even the voters misconstrue a particular celebrity as actually the nominee of a political of a party list, right? So anyway, that's another
Uh,
debate altogether. Ayaw
No,
lang
no, but
nating, we don't want that to happen here in the Bangsamoro.
Christian, I mean, that's one way of looking at the party list system, but it is also a system that allowed, to me, let me be honest about this, Akbayan and Bayan Muna, which did not really have personalities, to be elected with, so that's the flip side of what you're saying. It
Mm.
can also work. These are the parties which I can say they are the real political parties because they had advocacies more than personalities to push,
Yeah.
and they actually succeeded and it's just because we got the party list system wrong, and that's why you see all these problems.
Yeah. So in this case, what would you like to see in the electoral code in the Bangsamoro?
Well, first and foremost, a clear set of qualifications that can be a basis to register or accredit which political parties can join. Number one, it is people are asking, should you allow national parties to participate in the BARM election, or should it be limited to regional parties? So probably the electoral code must be clear about it. That my reading is that only regional parties or parties that operate within the BARM can participate in the BARM uh, election or
Isn't
in
that
the
obvious?
election.
Isn't that obvious? Because we're talking
You
here
know,
of determination, self-governance. And
well,
bakit
that
papasok
seems
yung
to be
national
very
party?
obvious, and I see it in the in the Organic Act itself saying that. But people are asking, how about, let's say, PDP Laban having a satellite party for the BARM, something like that. Or national party. That those are dynamics.
Yeah.
Okay, but these dynamics or natural inclination of political actors can actually be the behavior can actually be influenced by the design that you make. So
Mm.
one design that you can actually provide and require is to say that only truly regional parties can, and of course there are operational terms that you can use to make that happen in the
Mm.
law. And it might also be good, as I was stressing before, that in the ordering of nominees, you want to be more inclusive. You
Mm.
might adapt the zipper system
Babae,
in
lalaki, babae, lalaki.
babae lalaki, o dalawang babae basta yung pangatlo ibang gender, something like that, or youth, or you can even use dynasties. No one can be in the same list when they are of relative of this degree,
Mm.
something like that. And you can even, if you want to be a bit more geographic, the nominee should come from different island groups,
Yeah,
so
that's
that
true.
it can truly be a. So these are designs that you can impose by way
Mm.
of re-engineering the politics.
So there's this
So
guidance coming from the organic law, but you have to put the nitty-gritty in
yes,
the electoral code. What else would you
yes,
like to see? Very interesting, yan.
that's one. There are a lot of gaps also, like how would the law kasi says that the qualification will be provided by the electoral code, but the election will be run by COMELEC,
Mm.
and the accreditation process would have to be approved by COMELEC. So perhaps a more detailed, should I say, operational relationship between COMELEC and the Bangsamoro Parliament, or what will come up out of the Bangsamoro Electoral Code might be made, no, yung ganon, you clarify. Now another is the districting of the yung parliamentary district, because as of now there are, you know nagko-correspond kasi yung district, yung assembly representatives, 3 per district, dun sa existing legislative districts,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But now you will have 32 district representatives within the arm. Di ba? So you have to redistrict the whole region to create 32 parliamentary districts
Mm.
for the BARM. And one possible problematic consequence, if that is not that will not be noticed, is to have a bound to redefine the boundary outside of the existing congressional district configuration. Kasi ang mangyayari diyan, if you will synchronize the election with the national election, people in the BARM will vote for their national congressman. They will also vote for their regional parliamentary representative. So pag magkaiba yung distrito, baka magkalituhan sa kung
Oo.
sino yung iboboto.
It could be messy. And how about the 63 barangays in North Cotabato?
That's another
Saan mo
problem.
siya ididikit?
There is well, that's a policy issue, I think, no? Although the law, there's a big gap there. Ano ba sila? Should they be kung ba ididikit mo ba sila doon sa adjacent municipality? Not really adjacent, but some are not adjacent,
Mm.
no? To the nearest municipality in Maguindanao. Doon galing from North Cotabato, di ba? These are questions. Or should they constitute as one district itself, no? And then in the national election, sino iboboto nilang congressman? Will they still vote for governor in North Cotabato? Will they vote for governor in Maguindanao or in whatever? Or should they have their own? These are things that need to be defined. Probably they are dapat sa local government code ng BARM probably, and then the electoral code will just follow. But if in the absence of a local government provision, perhaps the electoral code can adapt it. Pero COMELEC kasi came up with a resolution last October that says that in the absence of a guidance from the Bangsamoro Parliament, then they will consider those territories as they are, no, separate from Maguindanao. But that and I think COMELEC now is hoping that this can be defined better, because that is going to be a problem, especially when they're using automated election in terms of configuring the system
Yeah,
in that
precisely.
area.
And of course, the number of ballots that you need to prepare, right?
Yes.
Kasama yung
The worst
nitty-gritty
that
in
can
terms of
happen is that
election management.
yes, and the worst that can happen is you might be required to use two ballots if you cannot, configure uh, 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 the system, the technology to align it with the national election configuration.
So how do we solve this situation now? Because it seems like if I'm Comelec, I'm in a dilemma. Of course, I'm still preparing as though the elections would proceed in 2022 in the Bangsamoro region. But there are, I think, at least five bills filed at the House of Representatives seeking to extend the BTA and to postpone the elections that is originally set in 2022. I mean, if the situation is this messy, I mean, at least based on this conversation, it seems like everything points to the idea that perhaps it might be better to postpone the elections. But on the other hand, there's the other side of the debate. Would it be better for the MILF? Of course, sinasabi ko MILF, although technically government na sila dahil nandun sila sa BTA, hindi mo mas maganda if they get a fresh mandate?
Well, there was a very good opinion that I read, pointing to that position, no. Unang-una, the BTA is not elected.
Yeah.
No, the BTA members are appointed by the president, nominated by the MILF, and it would be good to, if you talk about peace in the area, you might want to consult the people by having those who would make decisions elected as soon as they can, and that's one argument in pushing for the election. Now, if you're talking about election, and this might perhaps be an oversimplification of things, but if you're talking about election, it's really the decision of the people voting, electing. You consult them. It's not a play of the political elites in the region. It's not their decision, actually. Ultimately, whatever they decide on, even the issue of postponement, actually, to me, I think it makes sense. Maybe it's even legal and constitutional for a postponement to need the approval of the voters in a plebiscite, because it is the people that chose to hold the election in 2022, not the Congress, not the not any of the powerful groups in that region. So ultimately, when you look at the basic principle that people should be deciding all these things, Di ba dapat sila papalitan mo yung rules eh. So,
Oo.
di ba dapat ikonsulta mo yung tao?
Understandably, because they ratified the new organic law
Exactly.
in a plebiscite, and then naka-spell out dun yung ano eh, yung
Yeah.
mga mangyayari dapat, and then you're going
Yeah.
to change the rules of the game. Pero if you're talking of another plebiscite, when can you reasonably
And
set
that's
that?
precisely the point. And that's why technically it makes more sense to hold the election na walang question sa legality and all and mandate and everything. No, but elections are also supposed to be held when you're prepared for it. And if you're not doing the things that are necessary to prepare for the election, then the logic of postponing it becomes more viable if you really want it postponed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. Do you get the sense that the BTA is not actually preparing for the 2022 elections?
No, the pandemic is really a challenge, no? And there are a lot of things that could have been done by the BTA other than passing the Bangsamoro Electoral Code. Uh, when had the pandemic not happened, no? Perhaps there are other more important bills to pass also at the administrative code, which is really very important, local government code, the education code. But I just hope before that the electoral code should have been given priority also. No, it is difficult. It was very challenging, but that did not happen. Now, it might be unfair for me to be concluding that perhaps they did not want the election to happen earlier on, no? But if you really want to make it happen, then you really have to do the hard work now or even yesterday or even last year sana. So mahirap din magbigay ng judgment kasi, but you know like Comelec, if they didn't do anything now or last year to prepare for the 2022 election, the argument for postponing the elections will become more compelling. Di ba? I mean, kaya
Precisely.
I think kaya ngayon yung punto that kailangan itulak yung mga representative mo to do what they need to do because that's the mandate of the law. National law says elections should be held every 3 years. So we have to push COMELEC to do what needs to be done to make that happen. The same here.
Okay.
The organic law says that it should be held in 2022. So, you just have to push those responsible to do what are necessary to make
Okay. I
the
just want to make
2021.
your position clear. So for you, would you prefer that the BARM elections proceed in 2022?
As as a Democrat, yes, but I would want to listen to a more realistic assessment of the situation on the ground because I also recognize that the form of government and the passage of the Organic Act came out of a peace process, and
Yeah.
peace building is also a very important component of social harmony and all things that we would want in a society. So it's really very tricky in the case of ARM. But let me point this out very, very clearly. Whatever the situation in ARM is, does not apply to the national debate about whether to postpone election. There is no acceptable reason by now to say that the 2022 election will be postponed. I mean the national elections. BARM is has a unique situation. Now, in case logic tells us that the elections there needs to be postponed because of more overriding and overwhelming reasons, then that's unique to ARM. Kaya ayoko so my bias really is to hold the election as they are, as
Yeah.
they're scheduled.
Good thing you
Kasi ayokong
clarified that.
gamitin itong rason baka sabihin sa national election eh.
Yeah, good thing you clarified that because some people who are quite imaginative or even creative might take advantage of this push to postpone the BARM elections, also push for the postponement of the national elections. Mas
Well,
madugo yun if they push for that.
no, if you're a bit, if you're a bit conscious about it, you can see some signs going towards that direction.
Like
But
what? Like what? This
like
latest
when
push
you
to amend the
hear,
constitution?
well, COVID actually plays significant role in the argument for postponing the BARM election. Of course, the peace process is there, no? But I see COVID being put uh, on a prominent stature in the justification for postponing the BARM election as a way to probably see how it can go towards postponing the national election. No? Magkaiba ang sitwasyon. Very different. Very, very different. And that's quite obvious.
Well, we hope people won't go to the extent of even entertaining that idea of postponing the national elections and use the COVID-19 pandemic as a very convenient excuse to pursue their insidious uh,
Yeah, but you know,
objectives. Yeah.
Christian, one important requirement there is to do something about COVID right now. Because if we do not do something about COVID right now, then that justification can resonate better as we go along doing nothing. So if we really want the election, and it's not a question of wanting, it's really something that we should have because that's what the Constitution say, and that's what genuine democratic system that we profess to have should be having, should be doing. We should work for to eliminate all justification for postponement of election. COVID is not a valid excuse because many countries that are even less developed than us were able to hold credible elections even if they had COVID. There's really no excuse for us not to.
Okay.
Indonesia, with more than 100 million voters, had their local election last December amidst COVID. It was very challenging that they were able to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, former Comelec Commissioner Luie Tito Guia, for joining us on this podcast. It's very enlightening. Thank you for your insights, especially in explaining this unique parliamentary setup and electoral design in the Bangsamoro. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay,
Salamat.
and that's it for this week's episode as part of our new Bangsamoro series in partnership with the Institute for Autonomy and Governance. Don't forget that you can also watch this podcast on YouTube. It's also available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Stitcher. See you again next week for another episode of our Facts First podcast. Thank you very much.